Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 20 after 9 p.m. here in Egypt, where I am, and I'm super happy. My name is Brett Wachowski, and I'm one of the honored people to be able to help MC a little bit for Vested Summit 2021, which is really the world's largest conscious tech gathering or summit. So, what we're doing is talking about technologies in a lot of different senses, right? Here we have four main themes for the summit: technology, investment success stories, global ecosystem, and consciousness. And there's also an overall theme for the summit this year, which is really investment itself and harvest. What have we harvested from the last 10 years or so that we can take forward into the next 10 years? What can we learn from each other? And this is really a celebration here of global collective intelligence and community of practice. So I'm really excited in a moment to introduce our distinguished guest for this conversation, which is titled Building a Bridge Between Silicon Valley and the Middle East. Before we get started, just have a couple of notes for everyone. Please check out Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. You can catch this summit on all those different platforms. Please leave questions there and inspiring comments. We're happy to respond and interact. And lastly, if you want to hang around and get a chance to talk to some of the speakers after some of these panels, just leave messages in those different places in Facebook and Twitter and all that, and ask if you can have information about follow-up talks. So I think without further ado, we're going to get into this excellent panel and more beautiful personal sharings from some of the most wise, smartest, and in-touch people on the planet for these subjects. So today we have Youssri Helmy, the CEO of Si-Ware, and Tarek Ali Taha, the CEO of Zocube, and Salma from Scale Up Ventures is going to be moderating and leading these gentlemen in an awesome inquiry. So thank you, gentlemen, for being here and sharing your genius and your experiences with us, and I'll turn it over. Thank you, Salma.
انت معايا يا يسري صح يا سلمى
معاك.
سلمى اللي راحت. طب انا ممكن يعني امودريت لغايه ما سلمى ترجع. فجو ahead يسري, please introduce yourself. You have such a wonderful resume من زمان قوي فيعني how do you present it in a nutshell كده?
Thank you so much. Well, if anybody is expecting the sharing the genius, they'll be on hold for a long time. I'm happy to be here.
Sorry about that. It's, the internet seems to be to be funny.
Okay.
But
so I just started by Youssri introducing himself كده in a small bio. Okay.
My name is Youssri Helmy. I'm a graduate of Cairo Engineering in the 80s. And then
أعظم ناس.
فاحنا bilingual ولا انجليزي ولا عربي؟
English, but if you wanna have any feedback in Arabic, that's fine.
I just wanted to make sure we don't leave anyone with a language barrier. So I started in the 80s. I started with a Mac user group actually, and that eventually evolved into IT Works, which was at the time a new concept called software development outsourcing in '94. And then we grew that. And in 2000, actually, I traveled to the US to attempt to IPO it, but there was a .com crash at the time, and we put these plans on hold, and then they never came back from the hold. And then we spun out another company called Swan Labs, which we sold to F5 in 2005, and then exited IDWorks in 2007, and then started another company called Ideal Ratings for social responsible investing. And this is actually still ongoing. It's a data feed for socially responsible investors, professional ESG investors. And then I went into venture capital for a few years, and then went into robotics for a brief period, which pivoted into Ionite. Ended up exiting that to Intel for autonomous vehicles, and then went back, managed IT Works again for a couple of years, launched a product there, and then beginning of this year, I started with Si-Ware. Sorry, it's long. I have gray hair. I've done a few things.
And you dare to say there is no genius about all of this beautiful resume.
And Si-Ware is a material sensing, democratizing material sensing. We developed a spectrometer on a chip, a near-infrared spectrometer on a chip, and that's a world first to have such a capacity and capability to perform lab testing in the field anywhere. So it's a portable lab level devices that we're commercializing as an ecosystem. Sort of we're Apple of spectrometry. So we have a lab store and interesting business model, exceptional hardware, amazing team out of Cairo, and globally commercialized now.
Wow. Press of wisdom, not the gray hair.
Salma, I really want to take from that final part that Youssri said, because I think this is a great example of the bridge we were talking about and the main subject. Because Si-Ware is an Egyptian company that started here by local Egyptian people, minds, and Youssri has, your title is now Chairman or CEO for Si-Ware, Helmy?
I'm CEO. Dr. Hisham
Okay.
Handara, the founder, is the chairman. I'm on the ground,
Okay.
CEOing.
So this is a very good example of a company that started in Cairo, and then someone from the Silicon Valley or from the Bay Area is taking off the company some sort. So why you guys felt that this is important for Si-Ware?
The world is flat, right? And COVID flattened it even further. And so this is a global technology, and I mean, it has to be globalized, and the world's biggest market for such devices is the US. Where in the US, we have people actually in 7 states. So I have one pre-sales engineer in California, but then the whole team is distributed now.
This is a beautiful story.
Yeah, it is. Maybe I can fine-tune the question a little bit. What kind of values are you expecting for Si-Ware from being in the US? Is it an IPO, or is it technology? Is it more sales?
So I actually have never been into a company thinking about an exit. If the technology is interesting and it has an impact, then we run with it, and then whatever happens, right? So for Si-Ware, the benefit of being in the US is the market, primarily the market. It's spectrometry, again, is lab testing, and the easiest lab testing, the most frequent lab testing is for agriculture, which helps both from an economic perspective, climate change, because we reduce fertilizer use. We optimize things, right? When you test on the spot, instead of taking a sample and sending it to a lab, you can optimize. You don't have to wait for a day. You get accurate results on the spot. And we're starting with the agri market, and then the automotive market, drugs and pharmaceuticals, healthcare. And I've actually, as an investor, I've seen many startups come in and say our technology is applicable in all these markets. But this time, actually, we do. we have major live names, live customers in these sectors.
Okay.
So market presence is first, and then access to other complementary resources, other experts in the fields. It is a more advanced economy, right? So being here in person does help a lot.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Tarek, you've also been a person who has seen the both sides of the table, I guess, whether it's the investor entrepreneur side or the Silicon Valley and Middle East side. Tell us also a bit more about your background with the Silicon Valley particularly. I mean, everyone knows you as the superstar in Egypt.
Okay,
We don't need that as an introduction. But
no, I'm white-haired, great as much as Youssri is. So we are from the same generation. I had a startup called Idar. It was a real estate online portal established in 1999. So it was really the internet point, maybe 105 or something, not even one. It was so we kind of took the journey from a very early stage, and there was other .coms that survived, like Masrawi, Career Mid East, and Arab Finance. It was a very interesting era and time because the internet penetration was very low, and despite all of this, we got an investment. So this gave my company and my startup really a different angle of seeing what does it mean to have an investment, which is very interesting as well. So the company got acquired by EFG, and then later on Link.net, where I've joined the team there for a while, and then I moved to EFG managing a real estate fund, then co-founded the Greek campus, and then moved to Twitter as the real estate director. So in a very, very short, brief thing, but I really want to say something about the subject because I'm passionate about it, because working in the Bay Area is, to me, was a revolutionary experience. Maybe that, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but if I really want to capture the kind of vibes and
Yes.
emotions and intelligence and smartness that really persistent in the Bay Area. Everybody has an idea. There is sort of a vibrant ecosystem that just surrounds you, and I wish that kind of, I don't know, magic would be able to transform. I don't know how to transform it. I think maybe we need to do more into the education level. I think we need to do more in the hiring. I think we need to do less events in the terms of getting together. I love the format that you guys did. I think this is more important. So if we're talking about the bridges, Salma, and what I've seen there, what I really wish to see here being moved from the Bay Area is this kind of vibes. I don't know if this is the right word to use. This sense of achieving the impossible, dreaming big. This is the kind of thing you feel, in Twitter. Both of my colleagues are actually created startups within a year and went and got funding. So this whole ecosystem of the ability to really start and go and exit, it's crucial, and I think we need to work hard to do that kind of bridges. And I wanted to ask Youssri on the 3 things we need to capture from the Bay Area, and I will say mine after his answer.
So I think you nailed it. Actually, what I realized over the years is the biggest cap is the mindset. The biggest cap to growth is that when you don't believe that you can do it, then you will definitely not do it.
Absolutely.
If you do believe, then you may or may not, depending on the execution, right? But it's so true, and it's a shame that I go back to Egypt every once in a while now, and they still haven't gotten that spirit, even though there are countless examples now of XYZ was doing whatever and was in a completely something different, and then they get in and jump into some technology. Airbnb is a famous story of 2 founders who were almost homeless for a few years without being able to raise funds, and then they take it to become a multi-billion-dollar company, tens of billions of dollars. So that being said, people read the news too much. So I see 2 things. I see people with a cap on their thinking, and other people who just read the news and want the action without the execution, right? So they read the stories too much. So number 1 is the mindset. Number 2 is the craftsmanship, and that's also a big deal. The definition of growth in a career outside of Silicon Valley means you're an individual contributor, and then you start managing people, you become middle management, and then you become a big boss, right? And in the Valley, I find people my age, and they're still developing. I was still writing code until a couple of years ago. I don't mind jumping in and writing code now. So you got to have the craftsmanship first, in a way. And the craftsmanship is in whatever you're doing. It's code is one, just because that's my background, but design, UX, business, legal contracts. Just the craftsmanship in a legal contract that you see here is just incredible. The lawyers here are just incredible.
I know.
So craftsmanship is the second. So mindset, craftsmanship, and if you're talking about the third one is ecosystem, but that takes a lot of inputs, and at least we're getting some water in the desert in the past few years. The venture capital now, which is essential, it's the oxygen of startups. So there's a lot more oxygen now than it used to be. Than used to be a few years back.
Absolutely.
That part is the least worrisome, actually, because in a way, when you think about it, money is easy. Initial money is easy. Initial funding is easy, and but you can drag a dead duck so far. It has to pick up after a while, right? So execution matters. block.
طب سلمى
not
لا
agree
ده أنا
more.
you will not run away from you because you're also part of the whole. So you need to give your 3 points of how we can,
Sure.
what kind of things we
It's
can bridge
it's
between.
it's listen, it's innovation is in the air over there. It's you cannot not catch the itch. Is you meet the Starbucks barista and they're working in Starbucks, but they're working on the next big thing in their other shift. You get in the Uber, you get in an Uber seat, and then someone's pitching you their app. I mean, I can't tell you how many. The banks start co-working spaces and offer free coffee and free spaces for people to collaborate. It's really a scene that is uncompetable when you look at also the massiveness of networking over there and how people are so generous with their time and also so mindful with their time. So they don't waste their time, even though they're very generous. But if they give you half an hour, you have to think twice. What kind of value are you going to offer them in those 30 minutes in order for you to earn the rights of having another 30 minutes in another follow-up time where they're really going to sit and see how they can help you? So this is something that is of a diligence, of a discipline, of a commitment, of the kind of alignment towards waking up every morning thinking, what am I going to actually be doing today that is going to change tomorrow, that I don't see anywhere else, to be honest. And it's the one thing that everyone goes to Silicon Valley and gets so inspired by, that then runs and says Silicon Oasis, Silicon this, Silicon that, but then cannot replicate this energy because most of the people over there are drawn. There are people who are coming from everywhere, Tarek. There are people who are coming there from Egypt, from I mean, you both are there or were there at some point, and there's Indians, there's Pakistanis, there are Asians. They are people who are not local Americans, but they are I would say the crazy ones
Inspired.
that
Yeah, and that's why I want to ask Youssri at that point, why do I يعني when I've talked to a lot of startups in Cairo, they only see the Bay Area and the Silicon Valley as part of the investment, although we haven't seen a lot of investments actually coming. But it's source of the mindset is the only thing we need to capture from Silicon Valley is the amount of money that the VCs can put into a startup, and they don't see the other items we've discussed, the innovation, the vibes. So my question to you, Youssri, is how can we change the mindset of Egyptian startups that there is so much about the Silicon Valley than the money and VCs? And also, are VCs interested in the Egypt to invest or not from Silicon Valley? Would they be interested or not? And how we can tackle that interest or even approach it better?
So I'll start with the second because it ties into the first. I think the concept of venture capital investing is the most trusting financial transaction there is, right? So when you go take a loan from a bank, they will ask for, other than the samples of DNA from your blood, you and your family and neighbors and everyone you've met in your entire life, they will ask for collateral and what have you. Venture capital, you would go in as a new, possibly a new team on the block. First time you've been doing this, but you look like you know what you're talking about, and you have a lot of spirit and about 10 slides, and they'll give you a few $1 million. And so the level of trust in there is incredible, right? So for someone to say, I would love to go to Silicon Valley to raise money, that means they're really striving for the top. This is the best you can come up with. If they give you the money, that means they trust you and they know what they're talking about. So trust from the experts is the best kind of trust. And I've heard we've had a couple of funding events for Egyptian companies from Silicon Valley VCs, which is incredible. To earn trust, you have to go through a lot of things. So yes, it's the final step, if you will. And the exceptions will be that a Silicon Valley VC would invest in an Egyptian company without having a setup in Egypt. That would be that is the lightning,
Zeus touching Egypt by that.
Yeah, it's incredible. But I would love it if we could get more methodical about it. which means setting up joint partnerships, enabling those VCs to open up local offices, whatever support you can do, we can do to make Egypt more inviting to them. They just bring a lot of expertise and a lot of network. So this is truly developmental in a way. It's not just, of course, they would be there to make a lot of money because that's the VC business, but ultimately it's super beneficiary for the whole ecosystem in Egypt. Sorry, my cat is stuck in the office here.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Salma, I will ask you also the same
Work
one
from
after
home issues,
you
sorry.
get your answers ready. What's your cat's name so we can?
Slinky.
Slinky. Okay,
Slinky, wow.
He's very slinky.
that's very Bay Area name. Sounds like an app name.
That's my daughter. My daughter named him.
Yeah, keep
So
going.
yeah.
Youssri, we're finishing up the whole VC value and investing. Yeah.
Right. So I remember my first impression when the first time I visited the Bay Area, and then when we moved here, and we used to live in when we first moved, we moved to Boston,
Yes.
and I tried to raise money there, and I failed. And then a VC from the Bay Area called me, and he said, "If you move here, this was for the networking product we built, the NetCelera, and we moved here, and they funded us. So it's if you move here, we will fund you," was actually the truth. And so when we first arrived, it was new. We were in Boston for 4 years already, and this was kind of a second immigration because it was very different. And then she was asking me, "How do you feel?" And I said, "It's like I feel incredible. I'm like that artist who finally discovered there's a place called Hollywood, and this is just mind blowing. Like Selma said, you go to Starbucks, you talk because anywhere else on the planet, we were the weird ones, right? Software in Egypt, there was about 7 of us total in the 80s. I mean, now I know that things have moved along. But Hena, it's just incredible. I had once a guy pitch me on a startup he was doing, and he was the CFO for Dropbox or Box. I can't remember which, to be honest. And his story is he was doing his MBA at Berkeley, and 2 guys were sitting next to him. One was a business guy and one was a techie, and they were talking about writing their business plan, and they were saying such stupid things that he just walked to them and said, "What you're talking about is interesting, but this is stupid. This is not how you build a budget, and that's not how you do a business plan." And I said, "Okay, we're hiring you as a CFO. Why don't you show us how a business plan and a budget are made?" And he actually did. So that's the kind of that's the definition of ecosystem on the street, right? It's everywhere. That's a bit excessive if you're not in the tech business, because it's really boring otherwise. I mean, imagine if you're not in startups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then don't be in Silicon Valley.
Right.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. When like I get in Ubers and they complain, everyone's in tech, everyone's doing this, and it's so expensive, and I'm like, guys, it's okay. Like there's a for everything. Yeah.
Selma,
Selma,
I want to ask you. I want to ask you a quick question, because you've briefly talked about it, which is something that is very impressive to anyone who's also been to Silicon Valley, which is the diversity part.
Yeah.
The ability of companies to somehow the culture would be even stronger than the people's culture, and they have this diversity and acceptance of others. And I feel sometimes that the startups here in Egypt, they fail into, although we don't have that kind of diversity in the society itself, but in the sense of accepting the others, and even sometimes the engineers, they're not building the culture of diversity within the startups. So how can we capture that kind of spirit from Silicon Valley and get it here to the startups in Cairo?
It was also about events, Tarek. So like if you have any sort of affiliation, you will have a networking event for it. So if you are Asian Latino, there's going to be a community for you. If you are into arts, digital arts, you're going to find something. If you are women in tech, if you are female engineers, if you are LGBT, if you know, you name it, if you are anything that is an affiliation or you relate to something, you will find a community there, and that community will create some sort of a support. And the companies themselves are very welcoming to the idea of hosting events about community, not necessarily selling the entrepreneurship spiel or bringing in the same people to come and talk and meet and network, but really intellectual conversations, and people who are there to mingle, people who are there not to actually be sitting with the same 2 or 3 people they know already, but people who are on the looks for finding it's the curiosity, I think, Tarek, that you find there. And it was an itch that got to me, to be honest, as well. I mean, when I was there, I was obsessed with networking. I used to go, I counted them over 3 years. I went to 379 events.
So
Because I used
what you would tell an Egyptian startup today to be able to get this kind of diversity into their companies, what they can do?
Start, if you believe in something, if you are a part of something, start a community around it. Even if you know, a few of your friends get together, not for the purpose of just having fun and this and that, but like just really being much more how do we even you know, take whatever this is to a whole next level, make our lives much more interesting. You know, I sit in cafes and all people care about is Kora and football, and it sometimes gets super annoying because I'm there with a laptop and I'm trying to work, and and that consensus seems to be a morning consensus, but not necessarily an evening one. So this is the kind of vibes that build diversity into the mix, and that is a global mindset as well. It goes back to the mindset and the culture. You walk in the Egyptian streets, and maybe you find people who are very similar, even though we are very diverse. We are 100 million at the end of the day.
It's true.
But we because we are a lot, I think we don't look outside. We tend to be bubbled in whatever it is inside. So I would say just have a much more open eye to what's going on outside, with a lens of curiosity, rather than what am I going to benefit out of this? Am I going to get an investment? Am I going to, like, you know, this is kind of the mindset here. How can I benefit?
Excellent. Yeah, and Youssri, I want you to talk about the Tech Wadi briefly, because it was a kind of example of an organization that's trying to bridge the experience, the network from Silicon Valley to Cairo. How was the success from Tech Wadi? You've worked with them for a while. If you can tell us more about this, please.
Sure. So Tech Wadi was started by 3 people before I arrived to the Valley, and then somehow they ended up saying, "Can you run it for a while?" And I did. So I actually ran it for a year or a year and a half. Okay. And it is an organization, a not-for-profit, that is dedicated to building bridges between Silicon Valley and mostly the Middle East. But it's really generally global. And I thought of it, frankly, I thought of it in a very self-centric way, in that I wanted every pain that I went through not to happen to anyone again. And I thought, let's solve for that pain. And the pain at the time was, what if you're an entrepreneur looking for funding and you don't know anyone and you don't have any network? And I'm an immigrant. I'm a repeat immigrant, as I explained. I mean, I moved from Egypt to Boston and then to California, and every time you start from scratch, your social network, you just start to get to meet new people and what have you, and that's painful. So the idea was to connect as many people, as many good people as possible, effectively. And so the whole thing was built around let's design for increasing the membership. So we made it free, and then we looked for funding from sponsorship from companies. And there was quite a few generous ones that were happy to do that. And then we did a fairly big event where we invited VCs even from the region at the time, and anyone with a second, third degree link to Egypt, to the Middle East, to the Near East, even to come to that event. And actually, I think the founding of Souk.com, which ended up being acquired after that by Amazon. I think the CEO met the co-founder at the TechWed event, which was really, really cool. Because that's exactly the intent, is to get to meet people like you or complementing you in your mental bubble of startups. Like Selma's saying, so not everybody has to start a startup. Selma, some people need to watch soccer every once in a while. But yes, in that bubble. So that was the bubble, really. That was a friendly bubble for newcomers with no network to network and create things. And then it grew. I left a long time ago. I stayed on the board for a while. I'm still an advisor, but I got pulled out because of work. It's just it was a lot of load. It was a lot of work, as you can imagine.
So do you think the TechWadi model is an example of the things we should be more of it, or
I think so. So one thing about the thought is, do you create 10 products and sell one copy of each, or do you create one product and sell 1 million of that or 10 of that? Okay. And I would stick with TechWedi. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. Why not? Oh, let's go out and support TechWedi and add more people there. And they're happy to cooperate in any term. They're all volunteers. They're all very good people. And just let's support them. Let's help them in one way or the other. They're happy to support any inbound demand.
Maybe Tarek was posing the question of, do we need more of TechWedis in other places? Because this is particularly Silicon Valley, yes. But maybe there is the for everywhere, and they want to. They Absolutely. Are engaged. They want to be engaged, but it's just a matter of engaging them.
It's always a challenge to engage people. I mean, they have full-time jobs, but it's one thing. Being here as an immigrant, again, it's a social network, not just a professional network. So that makes it easier. That makes it higher priority, if you will, that you connect with people with similar interests from reasonably common background, first or second generation. It's very pleasant, and it's very fulfilling and rewarding. Yeah.
I think the globe is starting to be much more interesting for Silicon Valley, especially after COVID, because COVID highlighted so much of the planetary problems that are maybe outside the bubble of Silicon Valley itself. Silicon Valley in and by itself is a bubble.
Oh, definitely.
It's for sure. I mean, they complain about kale in the salad, $700 juicers changing the world, and smart socks finding their pairs in
machines.
But
the $700 juice thing, it failed, so I think it's not really a bubble anymore.
That's good, but there's so many other ridiculous stuff as well that's happening over there that becomes an interesting norm, that when you go there, I feel sometimes I also belong to that bubble sometimes, and I forget where I come from, and that I'll have to face the donkey cart in the streets, waiting for me right in my arrival in the Cairo airport. So we have become much more relevant. I mean, Silicon Valley used to be very snob about nothing outside of this areas happening in the world, and all the smart people will all come here and all of that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And then so that diversity, DEIB, right? So diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. These terms have become common terminology now. Absolutely, sir.
And we have a window of opportunity for re-engaging some of these investors in planetary missions. So we have become relevant when it comes to agri-tech, to ed-tech, to life sciences, to lots of the technologies that today the whole planet is actually asking for humanity to address and solve. And if we start positioning ourselves with that global lens or that global mindset, and actually have founders that have the global ambitions. I mean, I was having the honor of chatting a few days ago with Amra Wadallah over fireside chat, and he was saying that an IPO is just a base camp to up the mountain, and it's just one stop towards the. And when you talk to someone like that, it shocks you, because that's the kind of level that people expect over there to hear. But then when you talk about IPOs over here, it starts to become a very romantic notion that's more of a dream rather than a check along the path. So we do have an opportunity today to re-engage Silicon Valley in fruitful ways. The real question here is, what do we need to do in order for us to engage Silicon Valley better? So definitely Takwedi is a marker. What else do we need? And that also goes to you, back to you, Tarek.
Thank you, Selma. I love the Tech Wadi model. I think it's really nice, but I think there is part of us to blame. I was very surprised of the amount of Egyptian people working in the Bay Area, by the way. There is a lot of Egyptians working there. And Facebook, Twitter, we had a lot of people. And I think I blame myself because I wanted to post a lot of my experiences, put it in a blog. I never did this. And I think it's important for Egyptians into the multinationals to capture the essence and try to translate that knowledge here to the Egyptian startups. I think it's very crucial and it's important as individuals or something through the Tech Wadi. And sometimes I feel for some reason that unbelievably, which is Youssri said it, that some of the companies keep repeating the same mistakes. So it's, you go, and I'm working with a lot of startups here, and I'm very surprised that the quality part is really something that they need to work on. If you want to dream big as Silicon Valley, you need to start focusing on the kind of standards and quality of product, user interface. I don't think there is any excuse now today in people to create product that are
They're ugly. That's the word.
ugly or not functioning or crashes or
Yes.
or it's doesn't have the basic user interface experience.
So another. Sorry,
yeah, go
sorry,
ahead. Go.
Just hit me that I'm also on the board of Endeavor, and
Yes.
Endeavor gives a global platform to socialize among high impact entrepreneurs in general, right? In Silicon Valley and others. I mean, entrepreneurship, like Selma, like you mentioned, entrepreneurship is not just Silicon Valley. There's 7 billion people and only a handful of millions here. So there's plenty of opportunity, plenty of things to be done everywhere. And Endeavor actually is doing a great job in connecting entrepreneurs, high impact entrepreneurs globally, primarily from developing countries, but they set up shop in the US recently.
But just because Brett came in, and so I'm worried that he wants to cut us off. So
yes. And
we're running out of time, it seems. But I want to say this very quickly, Salma, because it's very important. Sometimes I feel the transfer of knowledge that's happening, it's very artificial. It's sort of, we give some basic tips, but then the startups go back to their daily life and they keep doing things in the same way. They listen to whatever we're saying in a very artificial, non-changing attitude toward what they do every day in their life. And I don't know how we can make sure that startups actually listen to this kind of knowledge being captured to transform into their daily life. And we say caping, it's about the team, so it's kind of becomes like a flag. We put it back behind us, but don't really know what to do to build a better team, for example. So this is something I'm just highlighting, that we need to make sure that the knowledge being transferred is actually implemented and taken to the heart, and actually people see the value that's coming out of it.
I completely agree. I think it's the lack of mentorship as well, Yatar. I think it's because we talk a lot. We tend to not walk the talk. So it's much easier to go to sit and talk for hours to someone than to actually help them necessarily in those hours. Say like, what do you need now? You need startup investing. Okay, let me see who I can help connect you to, or let me look at your deck and give you some tips and ideas on how you can construct it in a better way. I think it's the productive talk that is the lack, in this mentorship, because most of the mentors today in the ecosystem are not really people who were startup founders. They're mostly corporate people or other things who don't have the same relevant experience. So it is actually the likes of Takwedi that can build a mentorship network for the Middle East entrepreneurs, in order for someone to say, hey, let me call someone at Google or let me call someone at Facebook, because they maybe are much more connected and build these products and actually can help me in a more productive way. So I think,
and Endeavor. They actually
and in
they have a very formalized mentorship program. I mean, Endeavor is not for everyone, so I guess Takwedi is more open in terms of the filtering. Anybody can join Takwedi. You don't get qualified. You don't go through an ISP, a selection panel like Endeavor does. But both, I mean, something. There's definitely an opportunity there for something that's in between.
Okay, one last thing, because Brett, I think, is gonna start, having his eyes pop, saying, "You guys
I'm
need
okay.
to."
I'm just the messenger. Whenever you're ready.
Like, what is one thing that you would like to see? I mean, we're posing this question of harvest. It's, the ecosystem of emerging markets is a 10-year, has passed the 10-year. We've seen it budding from 2011, and this year is 2021. So we're seeing 10 years. So what is one thing that you would like to see happen in the next 10 years to really foster and build that bridge between Silicon Valley and the Middle East? And I'll close off with that.
يلا يسري start انت عشان انا ما
I think the swivel model. No, the swivel model. I mean, we have one listed company, one Egyptian listed company, which is amazing, by the way. It's so proud of them, so proud of the finery. The first one from the region was Aramex. طبعا Fedi was an amazing pioneer, and his record stood there for too long, frankly, even for him. This is so.
Right.
I think the one thing you'd want is a reasonable frequency of that. So that being a generally, I wouldn't say normal. It's never really normal to list in a global stock exchange, but a frequent event. I don't know how many exactly. But yeah, that would be a good criteria.
To me, Selma, it would be to capture the essence of what makes Silicon Valley is Silicon Valley. If we manage to transfer this kind of vibes, we will have those kind of IPOs Youssri is dreaming of. If we're just looking for the artificial part of let's get the money without building the true values that makes those company authentic and real, and I don't think we'll be capable of creating the IPOs we dream of. So we need to start with what makes Silicon Valley ticks in terms of quality products, true teamwork, innovation, true ecosystem of people helping each other and coming together. If we build those kind of things, in essence, it's the vibes or the social part or the economy or whatever you're going to call it. I think we would that would be amazing to be able to transfer.
Absolutely. I agree with both of you. It's exactly what I'd love to see more of in this region, but maybe at much more mission-driven companies that are IPOing in global markets, and maybe we can help spear that movement together. Thank you so much for your time, and I'd really love to give the floor to Brett and off to another conversation. Hopefully, maybe you'll join us next year physically for yet another beautiful conversation. Thank you.
Would love to.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, gentlemen. I didn't really have any expectations about what might be discussed on this topic of building bridges between Silicon Valley and the Middle East, and I'm kind of blown away, to be honest. I love that all three of you were actually quite clear that, quote unquote, exporting the vibe, exporting the inspiration, exporting the mindset of Silicon Valley as being actually like the numero uno thing. It seems self-evident to me, but I didn't think of that. I'm really kind of moved by that because I think that's important, really important. And genius aside, Youssri, it was obviously beautiful to hear you and Tarek, your life experience, is priceless. Again, we've been talking tonight about collective intelligence and community of practice. So I feel like I'm in my masterclass. I'm learning from people that have been in the field. So I want to thank you both so much. for taking this time. To me, it sounds like we're just going to decentralize Silicon Valley, just like the tech, and kind of expand with that mindset. And again, you know, Vested Summit really being the world's largest conscious tech gathering, it's really significant to reveal what people are talking about in all these conversations. There's a common thread of synergy, interconnectedness. I know that might not be the old-fashioned terms in business or investment, but if you actually watch the footage of all of the people here talking, we're understanding ourselves to be a living planet that we're all part of. And I'm just really happy I was here to understand that's the beauty of Silicon Valley that sometimes I even lose sight of because of the numbers and the unicorns, but really it's that beautiful heart energy of wanting to make the world a more beautiful place. So thank you for sharing your time today and as part of the global ecosystem theme and for being part of our journey here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.